Let's take a look at the Rabbit R1, which was showcased at CES 2024 and is now available for pre-order for just $199. So first of all, let's take a look at the hardware. So what we have here, we have a push to talk button here at the top and a scroll wheel to interact with the screen. Furthermore, we have a rotating camera up here and a 2.8-inch TFT touchscreen. On the inside, so let's just hop down so you can see a few things that are being showcased here. And now the specification itself. So this thing is sporting 4 GB of RAM and octa-core processor that runs at 2.3 GHz, as well as 128 GB storage. There's a dual microphone array for audio input and speakers, of course, a USB-C port for charging and maybe other things like loading data and whatnot, a SIM card slot. This allows for LTE support. And then, of course, we have the usual Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. There's also sensor-wise an accelerometer, a gyroscope for motion sensing, and the magnetometer, did I say that right? And GPS for orientation and location tracking. The battery is supposed to last a day, according to Rabbit Inc. And here's the thing, the operating temperature is 0 to 45 degrees Celsius. So, and then there's the value in Fahrenheit as well. The point is, 0 is not a lot. So there's like plenty of regions in the world where temperatures go easily below 0 for at least a few months per year. I'm a bit skeptical about this, to be honest, and I'm also a little confused because the first time I see 0 as a temperature for like a hardware device such as this. Also size-wise, it's about half the size of a phone. But from what I understood, it's currently not supposed to replace your phone, meaning you have to carry around this thing and your phone. We'll get to that later, but for now, that was the hardware. Now, how does this work? So the R1 aims to solve a particular problem. Right now, we can say things like, hey, write me an email, I don't know, in a friendly tone, whatsoever, yada, yada. And an LLM will just do that for you. However, what if you actually want to send that email to someone? So right now, this is what you would have to do yourself. The goal here of the R1 is to actually translate words to actions. So you say, hey, write a thank you email to Tom. And hopefully the R1 knows who Tom is, and there's only one. But generally speaking, it will translate your instructions into actual actions. It will write this email, it will generate it, maybe it will show it to you, and then it will send it to Tom. So this frees you from having to do these things manually, where right now you're copy pasting stuff from ChatGPT, for instance, into your coding ADI IDE, or where you paste text into an email and then you actually press send yourself. The way that R1 aims to solve this is by taking your natural language input and translating it into actions. So basically it breaks down your instructions into steps and carries them out reliably, hopefully, which is one of the main issues that needed to be solved, right? That it produces the same result over and over because, well, we get to that later, but you need to connect all your accounts. And if it does something that it shouldn't do, then that would be a problem. So, right, reliability is a really huge factor here. So basically, from a technical point of view, the idea is this. LLMs are not well equipped to operate user interfaces, maybe except if they have some APIs that they can use, but that requires a lot of customization and so on. And this is not really a universal approach. And obviously it has severe limitations. You might need API keys and so on. So basically the thought is you take natural language, you break the instructions down into steps, and then the large action model can actually execute upon those steps. The goal here is that the model to execute these steps is trained to learn by imitation and from demonstrations of users. So basically, it watches users perform certain actions and accomplish certain tasks, and ideally learns from that. This also ensures that it can handle various user interfaces that may visually differ, right? Because not every website looks the same. And then it breaks down the user actions into steps, for example, adding a song to a Spotify playlist, and strives to replicate these actions reliably. The R1 already has some pre-trained integrations, for example, Spotify, Uber, and some others. And for those, you would just need to connect your account. But of course, it makes me feel a little uneasy thinking having to connect all my accounts to this one platform because it's like Uber, Spotify, a lot of things, also a lot of things that involve payment details. So you'd connect them and then you'd be able to use existing agents. However, if you want to interact with something that is not already there and hasn't been pre-trained, there's an experimental so-called teaching mode. However, the teaching mode is probably something that needs a little more technical experience, I can imagine. So they do show it on their website. Let's take a look. So there are pre-existing integrations, and if you need something that is not already there, like there's Spotify was shown, Uber, and some others, but if you need something that is not already there, they offer something called an experimental teach mode, where apparently you can train your large action model and teach it. So let's say you want to log into SoundCloud and you want the LLM to learn that and be able to do it on your behalf, or interact with SoundCloud, then you can just instruct it with your voice and show it what you're doing, and it can learn from that. Also, they have obviously considered the case where people would want to share these integrations with others, which makes sense, right? Because otherwise a lot of people have to do the same thing over and over again to train their model. And they even mentioned that it will be possible to monetize your integrations and distribute them in an upcoming store. So interesting tidbit. Now let's move over to the concerns or thoughts that I had when I watched the keynote. Okay, so number one, I was hyped. I think, I like for the time I watched it, I was like, this is really cool. I was also a bit concerned because I'm an application developer. So obviously some of the things he mentioned did struck chord. And I was like, okay, he has a point there. But then again, there's some things that are not as simple. So I don't think we'll do away with phones anytime soon. However, it did look cool. I just wonder, the footage we've seen, like the advertising footage and stuff, the keynote and those little clips that were showcased before, like how close to reality are those? Or are they like kind of, modified versions that make you go, oh wow, this is really cool, but then in fact it might not work that well later on in reality. Let's see. I'm curious about that. Next one. How much money are you willing to spend? Because his example was to book a trip, right? He goes somewhere, he says, I want a nice hotel, I want this and that. And, I want flights, obviously, and so on, and create me some kind of timetable for my sightseeing tour, which that part I actually liked. So that's a really cool use case that, the thing is just, you can say, hey, I like castles, I like to eat, create me some kind of trip schedule that I can then work through and like do all these things. That's super cool. But when you book a trip, or at least when I book a trip, and I think it's true for most people probably, you have a certain amount of money and you probably don't want to spend more than necessary, especially on flights and so on. So I'm not sure how viable this is. I don't think people will generally say, hey, just book me whatever flight you find. And I typically want to look around, okay, what's the best option here? I need this flight to be there at a certain time. Um, or I don't want to cross it, like, I don't want to have to cross a certain kind of, they say, price limit. Get me the cheapest option. Maybe sometimes when I see the options, then that's, I think, the key point. When I see the options, I might change my mind about something. And I think that's maybe not that easy to do if an AI just does all this stuff for you. The next thing is hotels. So obviously we all have criteria for hotels. Um, things that we want, things that we don't want. I definitely need to see pictures of the place before considering whether I'm going there or not. So I'm curious how this is gonna work in reality. Also, the booking in Uber. I'm sorry, I care about the price. Like, I'm just gonna take any ride from anywhere. It does matter to me. So money is, I think, a big part. Like, if you have an infinite amount of money to spend, of course, maybe you don't care, but I think most people do care. Next thought I had was, why isn't this an app? And he tried to say some things about why this can absolutely not be an app and this has to be its own thing. But when it comes down to it, like, unless this would require special hardware, I know they have built special hardware for this now, but then again, can't you just do this on a regular phone? And now these phones are coming out with special chips for LLMs. Maybe those are useful for LLMs as well. And the question is, can this not just be an app? And then this kind of leads to the next question. Okay, Raventech, I think, was one of his companies, was bought out by Baidu because they wanted to do something with it. From what I understood, they didn't succeed in. They want to create like a Chinese version of Alexa. Apparently, it didn't work out. But he made a good amount of money from that, from what I understood. Now the question is, what are the odds that some big tech company like Google, Apple, whoever, is just going to buy him out, and then throw away the device and make this software? Or technically, what if they just do this without even buying the company out and just be like, hey, this is a good idea. Let's bake this into our assistants, like the Google Assistant or Siri or Alexa, whatever. This is, I think, where this might be going. Then next thing is you have an additional piece of hardware that you need to carry around. We all have phones for the most part, and now you have another half phone that it seems like you would kind of have to use together with your phone. I'm not exactly sure how this would because so far we've just seen the demo, but what if I book an Uber and I want to see where it is? These kind of things. How do I do that? Like maybe I can just tell the device to show me that. That would be nice, of course. But maybe there's instances where I really do need my phone for some reason. And this is like another piece of hardware. I'm not sure I really want or need that. And lastly, I guess this was just a marketing move. So you can, the keynote, they're like priming you for accepting a certain price. They're like, okay, phones cost this much. These, I think it was, what was it, the assistants, they cost that much. And, in your head, you're like already at the point where you're willing to accept like 400, 500, 600 euros. And then they were like, but you're just 199. So yeah, I just want to point this out. Of course, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I just wanted to point that out. Overall, I'm curious where this is going to go. I was hesitant about pre-ordering. I'm still not really sure. It's an interesting piece of tech, maybe, potentially. But there's a lot of concerns also, like what if the company goes down and then what happens with the device? It's just like a glorified piece of electric circuit garbage or whatever. So we shall see.